Welcome back to this episode of the Women in Money Cafe. Right, today, we're sharing hacks with you. So, have you ever found yourself in that situation where you've got a decision to make or a dilemma or just something's not quite right and you know you need to take action, but you don't know what to do? Or you're arguing with yourself about it? So, one of the things that I found, and that's what prompted this, is I went through a phase of working with lots of clients in this kind of situation. And then I had the experience myself. And that was when we started tapping into what our values are, the course of action that we had to take next. All of a sudden, it became really clear. And it wasn't just that we had clarity over what to do next, it felt easier. So we just thought, well, these are really good life skills to have. So why don't we get together and sort of share some of them with you? And hopefully you could get the benefit of them too. So today I'm joined by Michelle.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Michelle. And I've got Emily, who's
Hi,
new to.
everyone.
Hi, Emily. All right. And if I seem a little bit slow at the start, do you know what? I'm going to be honest here. Hands up, people. I'm a little bit grumpy. And the reason I'm grumpy is we've been hacked on Instagram. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to say Women in Money Cafe do absolutely not endorse NFTs or crypto. So if you see any messages suggesting that we do, they're false. Right, I've got that off my chest now. Hopefully I can relax and enjoy this episode. Ah, that feels better. Right, so, Michelle, what are your thoughts on values?
They're tricky
Oh,
because I think values can be good and they can be bad. It really depends on where they come from. So, if there are true values and that's what we're using to make decisions, that's a good thing. But I think sometimes values can be portrayed by people who they portray what they think other people want to see as their values, not necessarily their own. And I think that's when it can become difficult trying to determine, is that who I truly am? Or is that who I want to be seen as?
oh, we've got deep really quickly there, haven't we, Michelle?
It did. Sorry, it wasn't meant to get deep that quickly, but it kind of just flowed.
I know I like it because I'd never really thought about it like that because it's just like your values are your values. But until you said that, I thought you're right. I know of people that go out into the world and portray themselves as having X, Y, and Z values. And I know for a fact that's not true. So if someone else is capable of it, it means that I am also capable of it. So I need to do some self reflection there to check if my values are really mine. I'm pretty confident mine are mine. But, and I played a game which I'll be sharing with you later. That yes, I really do. But I think that's a really interesting take on it. So thank you for that. Emily, have you got any thoughts on just this whole idea of, what your knowing what your values are?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because I think once you've found your values, they're like the North Star. They can really help guide you through life in so many different ways. You know, how you spend your time, what you buy at the supermarket, how you invest your money, all of these things. But I think a lot of people don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. And so they're not always that clear as to what their values are. They're sort of subconsciously winging it. And I think that there's a danger when you're subconsciously winging it that you are going to trip up and make some mistakes and do stuff that is not aligned with your values, but you don't always realize it until someone kindly points it out.
I think that's a really good point, actually. There's lots of really good points that you've made there. It's like, how do you actually know what your values are? I think that's a really good starting point. So we're going to make mention to different resources throughout the episode. As always, I will make sure they are in the show notes for you. But as a starting point, I've got a big list of values I got from a Brenny Brown website. When I say a big list, I mean like a really big list. So it's almost like a shopping list for values. So you can kind of work your way through it and see which ones, try them on for size to see which ones fit you. I normally suggest the clients start off with maybe picking just 5 that really resonate with you. What about yourself, Michelle? Have you got any tips for how people can find out what their values are?
Same sort of thing, really. So I've had it in the past where I've been given lists to look at and see what resonates better with me. And I think I've spent time. So if I pick out a few And then I have to sit and think about it for a bit and go away and come back and go, is that actually me? Or again, is that what I would like to be? Is that truly me? And then thinking about some of the decisions I make. But I do like having the list in front of me, because I think if someone just says to you, what are your values? And there's nothing in front of you, that's a really hard question to answer.
What do you think it means to know what your values are?
I think it's really important because it gives us a sense of self. It's what our true self is. And that's what drives us. It's what gives us our goals in life. It's what gives us, decision making power. So it is really important to know, but actually going on that journey to find out what they are can be a bit difficult if you don't know.
Hmm. What about
The
yourself,
first
Emily?
time I went on that journey to find out what my values were was probably on a sort of like team building, self-awareness type day when I was working at the bank. You'd go and you'd do your personality testing and all of these things, and often there would be a values part of the day where you would sort of have to circle all of the ones that applied to you. And it's really bizarre because particularly in that kind of environment, you're sort of a little bit self-conscious in that, or here I am in a corporate environment, maybe my boss is going to come and have a look to see which ones I've circled. And that's just another example of how you might end up circling the ones that you think that the ones that would be best aligned with your own employer's values. And I think it's important to really take some time and do this on your own with a coach, where it really is about you and about no one else.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point, actually, is, how easily you can be influenced by your surroundings. So to try and hack the values hack so that you can find out what your values are without you trying to trick yourself into thinking you've got different values, you will be surprised. I found a really cool website, okay, which I've been playing around with. And it's called personalvalue.es. There will be a link in the show notes. And the way it works is like you get your shopping list of values at the start, and you go and click all the ones that you think, oh, they sound like me. I think I clicked about 22. All right. Because I just thought, oh, well, I like that one. And it didn't say you had to limit it. So I just went through all the ones. Right. Well, I like that one. I like that one. And then what it does is it's obviously algorithm based. It then flashes up two on the screen at the same time. And it's asking you which one is more important to you. So I've got being curious and I've got, let's say, justice. So I have to say which one's more important to me than that. And then it just takes all the permutations and it keeps whittling it through, asking you which is more important. So you end up with your top 5 values. And because they've all been pitted against each other and they've been done in such a random order, that your brain just goes a little bit screwy. So it does actually start telling the truth. Not that it wasn't telling the truth before, but it's kind of getting in that subconscious level. So I quite like that because it's gamifying it. And I love the output it gives you. So it gives you your top 5 values, and then it goes on to tell you different things you can do with them. But the thing I really like, hang on, I'm going to show you now. You can download a wallpaper for your phone, and it's got all your values on it. So every time I pick up my phone now, it's reminding me the number one for me. Does anybody want to guess what my number 1 value is?
Curiosity.
Authenticity.
Okay, curiosity is in at number 5. Authenticity is in at number 2. In at number 1, we've got justice. So, so I just thought I would share that with you. So it's a really good website. I'll say that again, personal value, no E on the end, .es. It's free to use, but there is a paid thing where you can get all kinds of fancy reports. Didn't bother with that. I just like playing the game.
I'll be doing that later because that sounds quite good, actually. That'll keep me quiet for a while.
No, so these are the different ways that you can go about finding out what your values are. And I think what struck me is I had a coaching client a couple of months back, and they were trying to figure out what to do in their business. And they didn't know whether they wanted to expand or whether they wanted to merge with another company. And I could see that she was just overthinking things so much and it got so much detail. I thought, right, well, let's take a step back from the mechanics and the operational issues of this. And I was just like, what are your values? And she said, nobody'd ever asked her that before. So we had to do it right from the start. Okay, so what are your values? And then in light of that information, what way forward feels right to you? And all of a sudden, she did have the clarity. to know which way she was heading in a way that felt right for her. And I think that's the thing. Tell me if you agree or disagree. It's just, I think when we know what is important to us, because that's what value is, isn't it? Like justice is really, really effing important to me. And I cannot tolerate injustice. When you know what the things are that really matter to you. If there's something in your life that's not quite right and isn't the way you want it to be, you're probably denying one of your values.
Yeah.
And it's when you've got this information, it's a tool then to tweak what you need to in life so that you can start living more harmoniously with yourself.
It's like a motivational tool though, isn't it? Your values. It gives you the motivation to then push forward with things that you want in life.
Mm. It can also be a deterrent.
Yeah.
It can stop you from doing things that maybe aren't right for you.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Emily?
Oh, I think we're getting quite deep very early on in this. It's quite beautiful. I don't know. I think what came to mind was I think the time that in my life when I have been most aligned with my values, but on such a level that I didn't even have to think about it. It's only really with hindsight that I feel I was very much living with my values was when I was traveling
Right.
and I was on my own, which meant that I was not really influenced by anyone. So I would get up and I would decide where I was going that day. And I would go and eat where I wanted to eat and I would talk to who I wanted to talk to. And the most freeing thing about traveling, I find, is the fact that the only possessions you have with you are the ones that you can carry with you on your back.
Oh,
And it's like you don't have a need for anything else, really. And I think that's when you feel most alone with who you are. And that's, I think, when you can really know yourself. But for example, some of the values that I felt strongly about then was probably justice would be a good word for it, like you said, but just traveling around, particularly parts of Southeast Asia, where you saw a lot of poverty and people living very different lives. And I felt very much that although all over the world people are living different lives, and that was fine, it was when I could see people who didn't have access to the basic things in life, like clean water and decent food and education and things like that. That's when I felt very sort of unhappy about the injustices in the world. But I'd say that, yeah, justice is a good one. Sorry, I'm rambling.
no, this is good. This is good. So the three questions I'll use with clients when we're doing work on this. And I'm thinking of the first question as I'm listening to you talk about traveling. And one of the first things I'll ask them is, so if you think about a meaningful experience that you had, one that really had an impact on you for a positive reason, it's like what values were at play when that was when you were having that experience? And it's again, then take the time to reflect. Okay, so for you, it was traveling. You know, Michelle, it'll be something else. Everybody listening, it's like what a time when I felt I had a really meaningful experience. What values was I living at that point in time? And starts to give you an idea of what you need to be experiencing to feel aligned with yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, it makes sense.
So I'm thinking now.
Right. Michelle's got a thinking face on.
I think it's often when you're going through something or you're experiencing something that is very different from what your values are, that gives you the starkest reminder of what your values are, rather than being in a situation where you go, oh yeah, that's my value. It's like, oh no, that really doesn't sit right with me. That's not aligned with my values. I find that a much more powerful thing.
Right. You find that easier.
Much easier, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting because I think recently I was just studying for a qualification and I felt so in tune because I was learning. And I'm one of those people that has to be learning all the time because it's the curiosity one. That if my curiosity box is getting ticked, I really know it and I really feel it. So, but it's interesting because what you were saying then, Emily, is the second question I'll ask people, and that is, think about a time when you were going through a challenge and which of your values were being denied. And it sounds to me, and I might have this completely wrong, but when you're talking about traveling through Southeast Asia and you were seeing people living the way they had to live, is it that your value for justice was being denied and that's why it was so stark for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think seeing it in the flesh, obviously you're aware of the fact that people all over the world are not necessarily having the same kind of life experience as you. And that's fine. A different life experience is fine, but it's just this basic entitlement, I think, that everyone should have to basic things like food and water.
Hmm.
And then seeing actually in reality in our RLL, can't say it, my daughter would be ashamed. IRL in real life, seeing it, it's, yeah, you just feel sick to your stomach. You just think, oh my goodness, how I'm one of these people where I see something that I don't like and I want to fix it. And then
Hmm.
it's knowing that you can't fix that. You can go and give someone a banana and they've got something to eat, but that's not going to solve their problem for them. And that's just one person. I mean, it's just so many things wrong with the world, really, in many, many ways that you don't get to see IRL and unless you travel and then you see it and then it's like, whoa, how do I fix this?
That sounds like it's been really powerful for you, that.
Yeah, and I think that has informed a lot my views about ethical and sustainable investing because obviously as big corporates, the power that they have to change lives, they're the companies that I believe that we should be supporting, the ones that are doing the positive things and not the ones that are doing the negative things. They perhaps do have a lot more power than I have. You know, they can do a little bit more than give someone a banana.
People power. Nothing
People
wrong with a
power.
banana, though. Hey, Michelle, you've had time to think and reflect now. You must have some nuggets for us. Emily bought you some time there.
She did. She did. Thinking about values, and we were talking about challenges, I think that can also come in a work context. So there's been times throughout my career or at work, even when, your first jobs where you may be asked to do things that doesn't sit quite right with you. And I think when we're younger, we can be very much that we do those things. We don't think about it too much. But as we get older, things may happen. And I know one of my values is ethics. It's about things being right. So if I'm asked to do something that I feel is wrong, that really bothers me and that's really uncomfortable for me. And it's driven me to make some very, very big decisions about what I do and where I do it. So that challenges one really made me think because you kind of go, yeah, I've been in situations where the ethics, my value of ethics has overridden anything I've been asked to do, my employment. I have to actually make a decision and change what I'm
Mm.
doing. And I have done. So that's how I know one of those things. So, truth, ethics, those things are really important to me. And other life events have meant that happens. So I've probably got more of the challenging side that shows me what my ethics are, because I think that's where your boundaries are.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder if that is the case, then that is when our values are being denied, it's more obvious to us.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that it's not even necessarily that we're sitting there and going, "Oh, I don't like this. My values are being denied." I think quite often we're sitting there going, "I don't like this, and I haven't got a clue why, and I don't know what to do about it."
I've
And
had some
it's
really quite serious reactions to that in a workplace. So you all know me very well, and I'm generally quite a passive person. And now I know of one incident in my working life where something was really sitting very uncomfortably with me, and I actually ended up challenging the other person, which is not something I would generally do, and left the room and walked out and disappeared for a couple of hours because it was just something that sat so uncomfortably with me that it didn't matter how much pushback I got from that other person, I couldn't do that. And then I came back in, carried on with what I was doing in the way that I was going to do it. And if that person didn't like that, that was fine. But that's how I know that is one of my values. And that's one thing that's always sat with me, that is something I won't compromise on.
mm,
So yeah, it is that thing. I think that pushback helps. And I think when we're doing the good things, the happy things, It isn't so obvious, particularly for me, because I just think I'm just enjoying myself at the moment. I don't think about whether it's in line with my values or
Hmm.
not. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's the harder bit that makes me think more.
I think it's when you feel like you're in conflict,
Yeah.
be it internal or external.
And it's that gut feeling, isn't it? It's gut wrenching. You're sort of, I can't do this, even if you tried. That's when you know that really means something to you.
Yeah, I don't know if this will make sense, but recently I had a decision to make, and it was like my head wanted one thing and my heart wanted something else. I go, well, holy crap, what do I do? Because they're both really smart, my head and my heart. They are, they're really super clever. And trying to figure out what the right thing to do was. And then when I drilled it back down to what the values were, and if I chose option A, I would have to live denying a whole host of my values. If I chose option B, I get to live in line with my values. So we'll be going with option B then. Thank you very much. But I agonized over this for quite some time. But once I sort of stripped things down to what it would mean to my values, it wasn't easy, but it became clearer.
I think that's when we align our life objectives, isn't it, to the values.
Hmm.
It's about having things that we know make us comfortable.
Oh, comfortable. Is comfortable a good thing to be or a bad thing to be, do I think?
For me, I'd probably say it's a bad thing because we should always challenge being comfortable. But I think that's where we start.
Or is this a values thing then? Even how we feel about being comfortable? Because I like a challenge. That's definitely in there with my value mix.
Yeah, probably is.
What do you think, Emily?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think that people who strive to be comfortable are probably going to not progress as quickly, as significantly in life as those who are more comfortable about being uncomfortable.
Oh, hang on. You need to unpack that for me.
Well, I remember a few years ago going to watch a presentation at one of my children's schools, and it was about developing a growth mindset. So, a growth mindset, for anyone who doesn't know, there's a book about it by Carol Dweck, which is very good and worth reading, especially if you've got children. So, a growth mindset is very much about saying, "Oh, yeah, you're frustrated, you're unhappy because you can't do something, but you just can't do that thing yet." You have to always start with something. And normally, when you try something for the first time, it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult and you're going to feel like giving up. But then you have to do it again and again and again. And it's like building that muscle memory.
Right. I'm going to
So,
play devil's advocate here, though. Right. Because what if one of your values, one of your core values at heart is about comfort? So, if that is one of your values and you find yourself constantly sort of challenging yourself and striving for something, then you're living in opposition to one of your core values. Because presumably there are people out there that are like that. I don't think it's the three of us, if I'm honest. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here recording a bloody podcast, would we?
No.
I feel very comfortable recording the podcast. Tricky one. Perhaps I'm lacking in a bit of empathy and not understanding why somebody wouldn't want to be improving their life and striving for more and progressing. I see life very much as a journey. You start at A, you've got to get to B. And it's not a straight line, it's not linear, it goes up, it's a very wavy line. But I just feel like the trajectory's still got to be upwards, ideally. You still got to end higher than where you started. A bit like the stock market.
All right. So I'm not sure that I agree that the objective has to be growth, even though I am someone who does do that. I think we're all different, aren't we? And I think if your values are such that comfort is one of them, and then just sort of maintaining the status quo is important, then there's nothing wrong with that. But if you find yourself trying to do things differently, then just be aware that it probably feels uncomfortable. So stop doing it.
If you always do things the same, don't you get bored? you need to change things up, try new things.
Well, you
Is that
probably
just
do.
me?
You probably do, but I don't think everybody's like that. I mean, I'm like you, Emily, for what it's worth.
Thing is, I'm like you too, but I think there are people, and I know people who don't have the same mindset, don't have the same feeling. I mean, I'm very much like Julie. I'm always doing a qualification. I'm always learning something that's really important that drives me to go forward. And I want to go on that journey. But I do know people that are just happy on a much slower journey, doing things at their own pace and not pushing themselves out of it. But they're quite happy.
In some respects, I envy those people. I think they're quite sensible, and I wish I could be more like that. So if there's
I,
anybody out there
I,
that's
en-
like that can teach me how to do
yeah,
it, I'm interested.
I envy those people too. I really wanted to do that, be that person. And I think when it was most apparent that I wasn't that person was after I'd had children, unfortunately. I hope I don't get a whole load of people messaging in saying that I don't value being a mother, because I really do value being a mother, and everyone's different. But I thought I could become a mother and then be satisfied staying at home and raising my children, and that I would have this amazing life of being a mother. It's all defining when you have a child. You suddenly work out a lot more about your values, actually, and about what drives you. And as much as I love my children, I just knew it was never going to be the path that I took, was to stay at home and just concentrate on the home stuff. I had to have that life out there.
I would hope there's zero judgment from anybody about that, Emily.
Yeah. But
No,
I really wanted to be that person that could stay at home and bake cookies and go and collect the children from school and just be, I was going to say Mother Teresa, but I don't know. That's the wrong reference. But, just to be mother, this attached mother to her child.
I think maybe you were sold the idea of what being a mum was
Probably.
like. And then when the reality turned up, you're like, this is not what I bought.
Yeah. I'm sure there's so many women out there like that as well.
Yeah. No, so we've gone off on a tangent slightly there.
So we have a bit, haven't we?
So what were we doing? What we covered so far? We were talking about trying to figure out what your values are. And we've given you some resources on how you can go about figuring that out. So this Brené Brown list, I'll put a link to it in the show notes. There's personal value website, I'll stick a note to that in the show notes. We give you some key questions to ask yourself around it. And that is, thinking about a time when you've been feeling really fulfilled. Think about a time when you've been feeling challenged. The other one I would throw in is once you start to get like ninja level on knowing what your values are, it's working out like what your rules for life are. What are your non-negotiables? Because you're maybe going to have, let's say, because we know I started with 22 values on the game and we drilled it down to the top 5. It doesn't mean the other 17 aren't important to me. But it's like, what are my ultimate non-negotiables for life? Getting clear on those. And I think, Michelle, the point you raised was really important, is that this shadow side to values. It's like, how have you got any tips for how we can sense check ourselves then whether what we believe to be our values are really ours, or it's what we think we should have?
They'll play out in how we do actually live our life, because I think as much as we can say something, so I could say I have, a certain value, but actually the decisions that I make in my life won't be driven by what I've said. They'll be driven by actually what comes from me. So you can probably look back at decisions you've made and gone, well, that clearly isn't me, because that's not the decisions I made. And that's not how I do it. And where values feed into your goals, they feed into your objectives. If you sit and actually separate them, and I think sometimes it's quite a good thing to do, that you separate what your goals and objectives are in life, because they can come quite naturally sometimes. Is that aligned to that value that you've actually just said that's what is your value? And you might find sometimes it's not. And then you have to challenge it. You have to say, okay, so this is obviously my goal, my objective. This is what I've said is my value, which is the overriding. So it's kind of a bit like your quiz, I think, but you're measuring it against decisions you've made or things that you want.
So would this be a bit like me setting myself a goal of having some amazing dirty amount of money in the bank? because that is completely not in line with my values.
Yeah.
So it's like, why do you want a disgusting amount of money in the bank? Because, but it's not going to tick any of those boxes for you. But what I'm wondering as well, hang on a second, because you really got me thinking about these pretend values. But tell me if I'm off the hook on this one, right? Because one of mine is being authentic and being honest and all that stuff. Does that mean I'm unlikely or less likely to have pretend values? Because I'll tell you what I did. I've got the list of values here in front of me, and I'm trying to pick out ones that are absolutely, totally not bloody me. So the first one that jumped out was sportsmanship. But I just saw sport. Obviously, I thought, oh, one of my values is being sporty. I'm never saying that in a million years. What else have we got? Home. I mean, I like my house, I like my family and everything, but the risk is sounding really bad. It's not one of my core values. And so if I pick out any of the ones that aren't me, I'm just never going to say them.
No. And I think where Emily sort of went back to, depending on your surroundings, if you've got your employer walking around you or you've got your colleagues, you may want to say certain things because they're saying them, or that's what's being told to you in the room. That's what you should be like. But actually, as you say, there will come a point where you look at it and go, but it's not, is it really? Come on, let's be.
I can't even pretend.
I mean, I can sort of say to you sort of, one of them that comes up. So the list that we had was sort of in terms of being competitive and things. And I think, well, I'd love to go. I'm really competitive, but I might be a little bit, but I'm not really. I mean, you know me, I'm not overly competitive. I'm quite happy. But actually, if I was going for a job, I might go, yeah, I'm really competitive. I would fight anyone for anything. I wouldn't.
I love this. Oh, God. I see what you're saying there about a job interview. Obviously, it's been a long time since I've interviewed for a job, but I do remember the last time I interviewed for a job. I did turn up and I was completely honest. I mean, completely honest. And they still gave me the job.
But that's your authenticity showing.
But last time I had a job interview and was completely honest, I didn't get the job. But you know what? That's brilliant because that just showed that company was not in alignment with me. And I knew it and they knew it. And I walked away thinking, whatever, I've dodged that one.
That's such a good point though, isn't it? Because you've turned up and you've been 100% you and they didn't want 100% you, which is great because it means 100% Emily would have hated working there.
Yeah, the thing I was really honest about was I said that their website was not reflecting what I felt I heard them say about how they were wanting to attract women as clients. And I said, I'm not sure that your brand is really doing it for women.
You called them out in the marketing BS.
I did.
Nice.
And, I didn't want that job because I was coming from a company who had a really bad website and weren't clear about who they were attracting. And frankly,
just for clarity here, it's not the quality of the website that bothers you most, is it? It's about how they interact with women.
They hadn't given it any thought at all as to what women were looking for and, the psychology of women or anything. So anyway, yeah, dodged that one.
Excellent. Well done. I can proudly declare that Legal in General are completely in line with my values, apparently. But, we've parted ways now, but still think of you Legal in General. Right, so as we start to wrap up this episode, I just wondered, have you got any last pearls of wisdom to leave the listeners with, Michelle?
I think me, once you know your values, once you're comfortable with your values, use them to help you with your goals going forward. And the things that you might come out with on the spur of the moment, do they measure up? Same with your financial decisions. Does what you're doing in your finances work with your values? And that can be quite a drive because actually, if they start to work with your values, you're going to be far more motivated to actually do the things that you have listed down. If you have a whole list of things that you've been told to do, which don't match your values, people can tell you till you're blue in the face, you'll resist it because that's what we do. It's human nature.
Good show. What about yourself, Emily?
I would say once you have thought about what your values are, then I think you have to go the next step and actually apply them. and start small, perhaps, when you're making buying decisions. When you're going onto Amazon, think, actually, is that the company that I want to be supporting rather than the one down the road that sells the same product, maybe a little bit more expensive, but it's still the same product? If you buy a coffee, think about where that coffee is coming from. Is it fair trade? Is it, just anything that you're doing, has anyone come to any harm in the process of that product or service being delivered to you? That kind of thing. Really got to think deep about it, actually.
All right. So Emily's top tip is start, once you know what they are, start living them.
Mhm.
I like that. I think the last one from me really is once you've got your little shopping list of your values, let's say you've got your top 5 or whatever number it is just as you're looking at them, just ask yourself the question, are there any of those that you're neglecting? So you'll have one that you lean really heavily on and that you've quite weighted towards, I suspect. Just have a little look at the ones that may be a little bit neglected. Just ask yourself, oh, I wonder what's going on there. And just, if you're like me, value number 4, get curious about it. Right. Okay, well, I'm just going to say, Michelle, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And Emily, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to us. And until next time, take care of yourself.